Steuererklärung. Steuer, tax, Erklärung, declaration, tax declaration. That's a topic that a lot of people don't really like dealing with, right? But I think it's really important to have a bit of knowledge about this because the tax framework in Germany is very, very complicated. So as an employee in Germany, you will be paying a lot of taxes, especially income tax. And you have the option to file an annual tax declaration. It's not mandatory for most employees, but there are, of course, some exceptions. So for instance, if you have received parental benefits or unemployment benefits or any kind of other income substitute during the past calendar year, then you have to file a tax declaration. The same is the case if you've had any kind of income from self-employed work. So in general, for employees, it's not mandatory, but if you're self-employed, you have to file an annual tax declaration. But even as an employee, it can be worth it to file an annual tax declaration. For instance, if you had a very low income in the past calendar year or very high deductible expenses. That's what makes the tax declaration in Germany so interesting, but also so complicated. There are a lot of expenses that you can deduct from your total tax burden. For instance, costs for education, for commuting to work, for childcare, for household services such as your cleaning lady, and also for working from home if you have extra expenses for your home office. Also, if you're married, you can benefit from tax splitting with your spouse if there is a big difference between the two incomes that you have. I already mentioned that the German tax framework is very complicated, right? And that's why people are usually using a tax software to help them create their annual tax declaration, or they are making use of a tax consultant. And these kind of expenses for a tax consultant, for instance, are also deductible from your total tax burden. So this is something I would really consider if you have a more complex situation and if you want support with your tax declaration. The deadline for filing your tax declaration depends on whether you are filing the tax declaration yourself or whether you're handling it through a tax consultant. If you're filing it yourself, you usually have to file your tax declaration latest until 31st July of the following calendar year. And to file your tax declaration, you can use the online portal by the German tax authorities. This online portal is called Elster. If you make use of a tax consultant, then you have more time to submit your tax declaration. In that case, you have time until end of February of the year after next to hand in your tax declaration. And the tax declaration is handed in directly by the tax consultant, meaning that you don't have to deal with this online portal or with submitting any kind of data to the German tax authorities. Due to the corona pandemic, a lot of these deadlines have been extended. So for handing in your tax declaration, either personally or via a tax consultant, there are different deadlines in place for the corona pandemic years. So I would highly recommend you to look up these deadlines online to avoid any kind of confusion. If you miss the deadline, you may end up paying a surcharge. So this is something you definitely want to avoid, because in that case, the German tax authorities can also simply make assumptions on your income based on the information they have from the previous year. So make sure that you take a look at the tax declaration deadline if this is something you are planning to do as an employee here in Germany.